The council chamber was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, and it glowed with soft blue light that could be seen from millions of miles away. Inside this massive station, representatives from over 100 different alien species gathered to discuss matters of trade and territory and the future of civilizations. Ambassador of the Dominion walked slowly through the grand hallway that led to the main chamber. His species had 4 arms and 2 hearts and skin that changed color based on emotion. Right now his skin was a calm shade of blue because he expected this to be a simple and boring meeting. They had been members of the Galactic Assembly for over 2,000 cycles and had attended hundreds of these gatherings. Nothing ever surprised him anymore. The chamber itself was shaped like a sphere with floating platforms arranged in circles around a central stage. Each platform held delegates from a different world. Some breathed oxygen while others needed methane or ammonia. Some had 10 eyes while others had none at all. The Galactic Assembly welcomed all intelligent life, though the word welcome had different meanings depending on how powerful your species was when you joined. High Chancellor stood at the central stage. He was tall and thin with luminescent skin that glowed from within. 4 sets of eyes blinked in sequence as he raised his long arms to call for silence. The murmuring of 100 different languages slowly faded as translation devices adjusted to his voice. Fellow members of the Assembly, began in his deep, resonating tone. I have called this emergency session to discuss a matter of minor importance. Our long-range sensors have detected a new species in the Outer Rim territories. They appear to be in the early stages of space exploration, and they have begun transmitting radio signals into the void. A ripple of mild interest passed through the chamber. New species were discovered every few centuries. It was not unusual, and it was rarely exciting. Most new species followed the same pattern. They would be contacted and evaluated, and then assigned a place in the galactic hierarchy based on their usefulness. Those with valuable resources became mining colonies. Those with large populations became labor sources. Those with nothing to offer were simply ignored until they developed something worth taking. Ambassador of the Collective raised one of her many tentacles to speak. Her species resembled large purple octopuses, and they were known for their impatience. What do we know about these creatures? Activated a holographic display, and a small blue planet appeared floating above the stage. They call themselves humans. They live on this world which they have named Earth. It is a small rocky planet with 1 moon, located in an unremarkable solar system at the edge of the Outer Rim. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They use chemical propulsion for their spacecraft, and they have only recently established a small station orbiting their moon. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Chemical propulsion was technology that most assembly species had abandoned thousands of years ago. It was slow and inefficient and dangerous. A species still using such methods was barely worth noticing. They are infants, declared Ambassador of the Empire. His species was reptilian with sharp teeth and a long history of conquering weaker worlds. Assign them to a labor guild and be done with it. My empire always needs workers for the mining colonies. Several delegates nodded in agreement. This was how things had always been done. The strong ruled and the weak served. It was the natural order of the galaxy. But remained silent. Something about the holographic image of the blue planet caught his attention. He did not know why, but he felt a strange sensation in his secondary heart. It was almost like a warning. A diplomatic envoy has already been dispatched, announced. The vessel Starlight Harmony will arrive at the human within 3 rotations. Scout Commander Al will make first contact and assess the species for integration into the assembly. The meeting continued with other matters but could not focus. He kept looking at that small blue world spinning slowly in the holographic display. Such a tiny planet, such a young species, and yet something about them made him uneasy. Far across the galaxy, The Starlight Harmony moved through the darkness of space at speeds that would have seemed impossible to human scientists just a few decades ago. Scout Commander Al stood on the observation deck and watched the stars streak past the viewport. He was like the High Chancellor but younger and more ambitious. This mission was his chance to prove himself. "Commander," said his sensor officer, a small furry creature named Al, "we will arrive at the target system in approximately 12 hours. Al nodded slowly. He had already prepared the standard greeting message that was used for all primitive species. It explained the glory of the Galactic Assembly and the benefits of cooperation, and the simple choice that every new species faced. Join willingly and find your place in the hierarchy, or refuse and face the consequences. No species had ever refused. The Assembly controlled thousands of star systems and commanded fleets of warships that could darken the skies of any world. Resistance was not just futile, it was unthinkable. "What do the long-range scans show?" Al asked. Al checked his instruments. "The human has approximately 8 billion inhabitants. They have satellites orbiting their planet and a small station near their moon. Their most advanced spacecraft appear to use liquid fuel propulsion. Estimated threat level is 0. Al smiled. This would be easy. He would deliver the greeting and the humans would bow and the assembly would gain another servant species. Perhaps they would be useful as manual laborers, or perhaps their planet had resources worth extracting. Either way, their fate was already decided. What Al did not know was that humans had been listening. For 40 years, ever since their radio telescopes had first detected alien transmissions, humanity had been secretly studying the galaxy. They had decoded alien languages and learned alien history, and discovered the terrible truth about how the assembly treated species it considered inferior. And in the darkness beyond Neptune, in shipyards that no alien sensor had ever detected, humanity had been building something that would change everything. Starlight Harmony continued its journey toward Earth. Its crew had no idea that they were not the hunters in this story. They were about to become the prey. Captain Daniel stood at the center of the bridge and looked at the main. The image showed nothing but empty space and distant stars, but he knew that would change very soon. His hands were steady, and his breathing was calm even though his heart was beating faster than usual. This was the moment that humanity had been preparing for since before he was born. The bridge of the USS Sentinel was a masterpiece of hidden technology. Every console and every display represented decades of secret research conducted in laboratories that officially did not exist. The ship itself was 200 meters long and covered in armor plating that could withstand temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Its weapons systems were powered by a reactor that generated more energy than all the power plants on Earth combined. And nobody in the galaxy knew it existed. Lieutenant Morgan sat at the sensor station on the right side of the bridge. She was young, only 28 years old, but she had graduated first in her class at the academy, and she had been chosen for this mission because she was the best. Her fingers moved across her console as she tracked the approaching alien vessel. "Captain," she said without looking up from her screens, "the alien ship has entered our solar system. Current speed is approximately 1/10 the speed of light. They will reach lunar orbit in 6 hours. Daniel nodded slowly. "What can you tell me about the vessel?" "It matches the profile we have in our database. Scout ship, lightly armed, crew of approximately 50. Standard diplomatic configuration. They are broadcasting an introduction message on multiple frequencies." Commander Price stepped forward from the tactical station at the back of the bridge. He was a large man with broad shoulders and a scar running down the left side of his face. The scar was a reminder of an accident during the early days of weapons testing when an experimental cannon had exploded during a trial run. 3 people had died that day, but the project had continued because failure was not an option. "Orders, Captain?" asked. Daniel turned to face his crew. There were 30 people on the bridge, and each one of them understood what was about to happen. They had trained for this moment for years. They had left behind families and friends and normal lives to serve on a ship that the public did not know existed. They were the first line of defense for a planet that had no idea it needed defending. "Begin pre-launch sequence," Daniel said quietly. "All hands to battle stations. We move in 4 hours." The USS Sentinel was currently hiding in the shadow of Europa Station, a civilian research facility orbiting Jupiter's frozen moon. To any observer, the station appeared to be conducting routine scientific experiments. In reality, it served as a supply depot and communication relay for the secret fleet that humanity had built in the outer solar system. Down in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Maria Santos checked the quantum drive one final time. The drive was humanity's greatest achievement, a device that allowed ships to travel faster than light by folding space itself. The technology had been reverse-engineered from fragments of alien transmissions, and then improved upon by human scientists who refused to accept that anything was impossible. "Quantum drive is green across the board," Maria reported through the internal communication system. "We are ready to jump on your command, Captain." In the crew quarters, Ensign Tommy Blake was writing a letter to his mother. He knew she would never receive it unless something went wrong. The letter explained everything about the secret program and about why her son had disappeared 5 years ago without explanation. He hoped she would understand. He hoped she would be proud. On the bridge, suddenly straightened in her seat. "Captain, I am picking up the alien broadcast. Would you like to hear it?" Daniel considered for a moment and then nodded. "Put it on speakers." The voice that filled the bridge was deep and musical, clearly produced by vocal cords very different from human ones. The translation software converted it to English in real time. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. We are representatives of the Galactic Assembly, the governing body of all civilized species in this region of space. We come in peace, and we bring an invitation to join our great community. Please respond on this frequency to arrange a meeting with your leaders. We look forward to welcoming you into the family of intelligent beings." The message ended, and silence filled the bridge. Turned to look at Daniel. "It sounds friendly enough." "It is supposed to sound friendly," Daniel replied. "That is how they operate. They offer friendship and cooperation, and then they slowly take everything from you. We have intercepted thousands of their communications over the years. We know exactly what happens to species that accept their invitation." He walked to the main and stared at the distant stars. There were hunters once, proud warriors who ruled their own corner of space. Now they serve as enforcers for the assembly, doing the dirty work that other species do not want to do. There were artists and philosophers. Now they process paperwork in bureaucratic hives. They had an empire that spanned 50 star systems. They joined the assembly willingly, and within 3 generations their empire was gone, absorbed into the greater whole. Daniel turned back to face his crew. "That will not happen to humanity. We did not spend 40 years building this fleet just to hand over our freedom to the first aliens who showed up with a smile and a contract. We will meet them, yes, but we will meet them on our terms." The countdown timer on the main screen showed 3 hours and 47 minutes until launch. In the mess hall, groups of crew members sat together and ate their meals in relative silence. Nobody talked about what was coming because there was nothing left to say. They had all made their choice a long time ago. Lieutenant Morgan took a break from her station to grab a cup of coffee from the small kitchen at the back of the bridge. She found Commander Price already there, staring at a photograph on his personal tablet. "Family?" she asked. Nodded without looking up. "My daughter, she turned 7 last month. She thinks I work on a submarine." Did not know what to say, so she simply stood beside him in comfortable silence. The timer continued to count down. When it reached 0, Captain Daniel gave the order that would change the course of human history. Helm, take us out. Engage quantum drive on my mark. The USS Sentinel emerged from the shadow of Europa Station and pointed its bow toward the inner solar system. Around it, 14 other ships of the same class appeared from hiding spots throughout the outer planets. They formed a perfect formation, moving as one, a fleet that no alien sensor had ever detected. All ships report ready, announced. Daniel took a deep breath. Mark! The quantum drive engaged, and the stars stretched into lines of light, and the fleet disappeared into the folded space between moments. Humanity was done hiding. Scout Commander Al was having a very good day. The journey to the human had been smooth and uneventful. His crew was well rested, and his equipment was functioning perfectly. In just a few hours, he would make first contact with a primitive species and add another world to the glory of the Galactic Assembly. This would look excellent on his service record. He stood on the command deck of the Starlight Harmony and watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. It really was a pretty world, he had to admit. The swirling white clouds and deep blue oceans reminded him of paintings he had seen in the museums back home. Perhaps the assembly would preserve some of its natural beauty after the integration process was complete. Perhaps not. That was not his decision to make. Commander, said Al from the sensor station, we have achieved stable orbit around the planet's moon. I am detecting multiple primitive satellites and one small station in orbit around the planet itself. No response to our greeting broadcast yet. Al nodded patiently. Primitive species often took time to respond. Their communication systems were slow, and their leaders usually needed to argue among themselves before making any decisions. He had seen this pattern many times before. Continue broadcasting, he ordered. They will respond eventually. They always do. The minutes passed slowly. Al used the time to review his notes on human biology and culture. They appeared to be carbon-based with bilateral symmetry and forward-facing eyes. Their history was filled with wars and conflicts among themselves, which suggested they might be useful as soldiers once properly trained. Their planet had abundant water and mineral resources, which would be valuable to the Assembly's mining operations. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected. Then Al made a sound that Al had never heard before. It was something between a scream and a whimper, a noise of pure animal terror that cut through the calm atmosphere of the command deck like a knife. Commander, Al stammered, his small furry body trembling. I am detecting an energy signature. Something is approaching at impossible speed. It will arrive in approximately 30 seconds. Al felt his four hearts skip a beat. Impossible speed? What do you mean? Where is it coming from? From the outer system, from behind the gas giants. Commander, the energy readings are off the scale. This cannot be correct. The humans use chemical propulsion. They should not be capable of generating such power. Before Al could respond, space itself seemed to tear open 300 meters in front of the Starlight Harmony. Light bent and twisted in ways that should not have been possible, and then something emerged from the wound in reality. The USS Sentinel was everything the Starlight Harmony was not. Where the ship was graceful and curved, the human vessel was angular and aggressive. Its hull was covered in thick armor plates that gleamed dull gray in the light of distant stars. Weapon ports lined its sides like the teeth of some enormous predator. Energy shields shimmered around it in a protective cocoon that scientists would have said was theoretically impossible. On the command deck of the Starlight Harmony, every officer froze in place. They stared at the incomplete silence. Their minds struggled to process what their eyes were seeing. That is not possible, whispered the navigation officer. Their technology assessment rated them as pre-industrial by galactic standards. They should not have ships. They should not have weapons. They should not have anything. Al could not find words to speak. His skin had turned pale white, the color of absolute terror. The communication system crackled to life, and a human voice filled the command deck. It was calm and confident and completely unafraid. Attention vessel Starlight Harmony. This is Captain Daniel of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of the United Nations of Earth, I welcome you to our solar system. Please understand that you have entered sovereign human territory. Any hostile action will be met with immediate and overwhelming response. We invite you to power down your weapons and prepare to receive a diplomatic team. Please acknowledge. The message ended and silence returned. Al was the first to recover. Commander, what do we do? Al swallowed hard and tried to steady his voice. Power down our weapons. Do it now. But Commander, protocol states that we should never surrender our defensive capabilities to an unverified species. Look at that ship, Al snapped, gesturing at the. Look at the size of it. Look at its weapons. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done so already. We power down our weapons and we pray to whatever gods will listen that they are as peaceful as they claim to be. Aboard the USS Sentinel, Captain Daniel watched the vessel comply with his instructions. The weapon ports on the alien ship went dark and its shields dropped. It hung in space like a child's toy next to the bulk of the human battleship. Well done, Daniel said quietly. Now let us show them who they are really dealing with. He pressed a button on his command chair and spoke to the entire fleet. All ships. 14 more human warships appeared around the Starlight Harmony. They materialized out of empty space, dropping their stealth systems one by one. Each ship was identical to the Sentinel, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields. They formed a perfect sphere around the alien vessel, cutting off any possibility of escape. On the command deck of the Starlight Harmony, Al began to cry. Small tears ran down his furry face as he counted the human ships surrounding them. Al simply stared at them with empty eyes. His entire understanding of the universe had just been destroyed in the span of a few minutes. Everything he had been taught about primitive species, everything he had believed about the natural order of the galaxy, all of it was wrong. The humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were not easy prey waiting to be devoured by the great powers of the Assembly. They were something else entirely. Open a channel to the High Chancellor, Al said finally. He needs to see this. The entire Assembly needs to see this. His communications officer nodded and began working at his console. Within minutes, a live feed from the Starlight Harmony was being broadcast to the council chamber on the. And in that chamber, for the first time in 3,000 cycles, the representatives of the Galactic Assembly had absolutely nothing to say. The Galactic Assembly was in chaos. Delegates from 100 different species shouted over each other in 100 different languages. Translation devices overloaded and shut down. Floating platforms collided as their occupants pushed forward to get a better view of the central display screen, where the impossible images from the human solar system were being broadcast. High Chancellor stood at his podium and watched his carefully ordered universe fall apart. For 3,000 cycles, the Assembly had operated on one simple principle. The strong ruled the weak. Species with advanced technology dominated species without it. This was the natural order of things, and it had never been challenged. Until now. This must be a trick, shouted Ambassador of the Empire. His reptilian scales had turned dark red, the color of anger and fear combined. The humans are using holographic projections to make themselves appear more powerful than they are. Our sensors must be malfunctioning. The sensors are functioning perfectly, replied in a tired voice. Our best technicians have the feed multiple times. What you are seeing is real. On the screen, the 15 human warships continued to hold their formation around the Starlight Harmony. They had not fired a single shot. They had not made any threatening moves. They simply existed, massive and silent and absolutely terrifying. Ambassador of the Dominion stepped forward to speak. His skin was cycling through shades of purple and gray, indicating deep thought and concern. We must consider the possibility that we have made a serious miscalculation. These humans have clearly been preparing for this moment for a very long time. They knew we were coming, and they chose to reveal themselves in this manner. This suggests intelligence and planning at a level we did not anticipate. "What are you suggesting?" asked. "I am suggesting that perhaps, for the first time in our history, we should listen before we act. Let us send a delegation to meet with these humans face to face. Let us learn what they want before we decide how to respond." The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. Some delegates demanded an immediate military response. Others called for the humans to be quarantined in their solar system until a proper assessment could be made. A few suggested that the whole situation should simply be ignored in the hope that it would go away on its own. But in the end, his proposal won out. A delegation of 12 species would be assembled and sent to human space to conduct formal negotiations. The delegation would include representatives from the most powerful members of the assembly, as well as scientists and military observers who could evaluate the true extent of human capabilities. 3 weeks later, the delegation arrived at the edge of the human solar system. Their ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately detected the energy signatures of the human fleet. But something had changed since the first encounter. "By the ancient stars," whispered the observer, his anger replaced by cold dread, "there are more of them now." The original 15 ships had become 23. They were arranged in a precise formation around a central vessel that dwarfed all the others. This new ship was 3 kilometers long, larger than anything the Galactic Assembly had ever built. Its weapon arrays were visible even without magnification, long barrels that pointed outward in all directions like the spines of some enormous sea creature. This was the USS Guardian, the flagship of the human fleet and the most powerful warship ever constructed by any species in the known galaxy. Admiral Ben stood on the bridge of the Guardian and smiled at the tactical display showing the alien delegation. He was an older man with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had spent his entire adult life working on this project, sacrificing everything for the dream of a humanity that could stand equal to the powers of the galaxy. "Open a channel to the delegation," he ordered. His communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Ben stepped forward and clasped his hands behind his back. He spoke clearly and calmly, knowing that his words would be translated into a dozen different alien languages simultaneously. "Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, I am Admiral Ben of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system, and I thank you for accepting our invitation. We understand that our existence comes as a surprise to you. We hope that this meeting will be the beginning of a new relationship between our peoples." He paused to let his words sink in before continuing. "But before we discuss trade agreements and diplomatic protocols, we believe a demonstration is in order. We want you to understand exactly who you are dealing with. We want there to be no misunderstandings about our capabilities or our intentions." On the flagship of the delegation fleet, Ambassador felt his hearts begin to race. A demonstration. What did that mean? What were the humans planning to do? He did not have to wait long to find out. A small asteroid appeared between the human fleet and the delegation ships. It was perhaps 500 meters across, a chunk of rock and ice left over from the formation of the solar system. Tractor beams held it in place, preventing it from drifting away. Admiral's voice returned to the communication channel. "This asteroid represents what we are capable of. Please observe carefully." The Guardian turned to his weapons officer. "Fire main cannon, single burst." The weapons officer pressed a single button. A beam of concentrated energy erupted from the bow of the Guardian. It crossed the distance to the asteroid in less than a second. When it struck the rock, there was no explosion. There was no shower of debris. There was simply nothing. The asteroid ceased to exist. 500 meters of solid rock and ice had been vaporized in an instant, converted to expanding gas and scattered atoms. The energy required for such a feat was beyond anything the assembly had ever conceived of. Their most powerful dreadnoughts would have needed sustained bombardment for hours to achieve the same result. The humans had done it with a single shot. In the delegation ships, no one spoke. No one moved. Several delegates had to be treated for shock by their medical staff. The observer quietly began calculating how many ships it would take to defeat the human fleet. The answer made him wish he had never asked the question. "Now then," Admiral said pleasantly, "shall we begin our negotiations?" 6 months had passed since the demonstration that shattered the confidence of the Galactic Assembly. In that time, everything had changed. The old order that had stood for 3,000 cycles was crumbling like a before the rising tide. Species that had been forced into servitude for generations were now demanding their freedom. Empires that had seemed eternal were fracturing along lines that had been invisible until now. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Ambassador walked through the corridors of the newly established Earth Embassy on the building was a marvel of human architecture, all clean lines and open spaces and windows that looked out over the glowing cityscape of the capital. Human guards in crisp uniforms stood at every doorway, their faces calm and professional. Beside him walked Captain Daniel, still wearing the same uniform he had worn on the bridge of the Sentinel. The two of them had developed an unexpected friendship over the past months, had been assigned as the primary liaison between the Assembly and humanity, and Daniel had been promoted to serve as Earth's chief military representative to the galactic community. "Your people have caused quite a disruption," observed as they passed a group of alien diplomats hurrying in the opposite direction. "Half the Assembly is terrified of you. The other half wants to be your best friend." Daniel smiled slightly. "And which half do you belong to?" Considered the question carefully before answering. "I belong to the half that wants to understand you. Your species has done something that should not have been possible. You went from chemical rockets to faster than light travel in less than half a century. You built a fleet powerful enough to challenge the combined might of the Assembly. And you did all of this in complete secrecy, without anyone noticing." "We had good teachers," Daniel replied. "Your own transmissions showed us what we needed to know. We learned your languages and your history and your science. We studied the mistakes of species that had come before us, and we made a decision that we would not repeat those mistakes." They reached a large observation window that overlooked the city below. Alien vehicles moved through the air in orderly streams of light. Towers of crystal and metal stretched toward the darkening sky. It was beautiful and strange, and completely unlike anything on Earth. "What do you want?" asked suddenly. "In all our negotiations, your representatives have made demands and stated conditions, but they have never explained the underlying goal. What does humanity want from the galaxy?" Daniel turned to face the alien ambassador. His expression was serious but not hostile. "We want what every species wants. We want to survive. We want to prosper. We want our children to grow up in a universe where they can explore and learn and create without being forced into servitude by someone stronger than them." He paused and looked back out the window. "For 40 years we listened to your communications. We learned about the Assembly and its hierarchies and its treatment of what you call primitive species. We saw what happened to them when they trusted your promises of friendship. We saw how they were reduced from proud explorers to maintenance workers in a single generation. We saw the pattern repeated again and again across thousands of years of history." Said nothing. He could not argue with the truth. "We decided that would not be our fate," Daniel continued. "We built our ships in secret. We trained our crews in hidden facilities. We waited until we were strong enough to meet you as equals rather than as supplicants begging for mercy. And now we want trade. We want cooperation. We want mutual respect. We have technologies that could benefit your people, and you have knowledge that could benefit ours. There is no reason we cannot work together for the good of all species. Nodded slowly, and if someone decides they want to take what you have by force. Daniel's expression hardened. Then they will learn what the asteroid learned. We did not build our fleet for conquest. We built it for protection. But if anyone threatens Earth or her allies, they will discover that we are very good at protecting what we love. Far away on Earth, celebrations were still ongoing. The secret that had been kept for 40 years was finally public knowledge. People gathered in the streets of every city to celebrate the fact that they were not alone in the universe, and more importantly, that they would face that universe as free beings. In a small town in the heartland of America, Maria Santos sat on her front porch and watched the night sky. She had retired from the fleet after the first contact mission, leaving the Guardian in the hands of a younger generation. Her work was done. The engines she had helped design were now carrying human ships to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Her grandson Tommy ran out of the house and jumped into her lap. He was only 5 years old, but he already knew the names of every ship in the fleet. "Grandma, tell me about the stars again," he begged. Maria smiled and pointed up at the darkness above. "Those stars out there, every single one of them, they are suns just like ours. And around those suns are planets just like Earth. And on some of those planets there are people living and working and dreaming just like us. And we can visit them now. We can visit them, and they can visit us, because we showed them that humanity is not something to be conquered. We showed them that we are something to be respected." Tommy looked up at his grandmother with wide eyes. "Were you really on the first ship?" Maria nodded proudly. "I was the chief engineer of the USS Sentinel. I helped Captain Fly to meet the aliens for the very first time." "Wow," Tommy breathed. On the Galactic Assembly held a historic vote. For the first time in 3,000 cycles, a new species was being admitted as a full and equal member from the moment of first contact. No probationary period, no service requirements, no resource tributes. The vote passed unanimously. High Chancellor announced the result to the assembled delegates. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the weight of history in his words. "Let it be recorded that on this day, the species known as humanity has been accepted into the Galactic Assembly as full partners in peace. May this mark the beginning of a new era for all of us." In the human section of the chamber, the Earth delegation rose to their feet and applauded. Among them stood Captain Daniel and Lieutenant Morgan, both wearing medals awarded by a grateful planet. Leaned over to whisper in Daniel's ear, "We did it. We actually did it." Daniel nodded, but his eyes were already looking beyond this moment, toward the future that waited among the stars. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The galaxy is bigger than we ever imagined. There will be challenges ahead, enemies who see our strength as a threat, allies who need our help, a universe waiting to be explored." He turned to face his colleague with determination in his eyes. "But whatever comes next, we face it on our own terms. That is what it means to be human." Outside the embassy windows, the stars continued to shine as they had for billions of years. But now, for the first time, those stars belonged to everyone. Humanity had announced itself to the universe. And the universe would never be the same.